What's best, poly hives or timber hives? Hello, I'm Griff Rees, welcome to Gwyn and Griffith. Here we talk everything beekeeping, farming, countryside living, and we do reviews as well. Now today I want to talk about the big subject, poly versus timber. What's best to buy, what's best to use, what's best for the bees. I want to take a look at it in this video, so let's dive in. Now before I start this video, just to put it out there, I am a big user of poly hives and timber hives, so you will get a fair outcome at the end of this video. I'm not going to be lenient towards any other material. I'm just going to say the pros and cons in this video, then come up with a conclusion. So with that said, let's look at poly hives and its benefits. So poly hives have been in use for decades now. I think they came from Europe, in the cold Scandinavian countries. That's where the technology was developed, and they work really well in cold climates. The polystyrene's got some fantastic insulating properties, so it keeps the bees warm and dry, and even in the summer it can keep the hive cool because the insulation inside prevents the heat from coming in, so they can keep that temperature control within the hive very well. So that's a big key positive point comparing a timber hive to a polystyrene hive. As a commercial bee farmer, another reason I use polystyrene hives is some people would say you can get 25% more honey from a polystyrene hive. And the reason behind that is a hive has got to be kept at a certain temperature for brood rearing. So the colder the hive, the more bees that hive needs to bring that temperature up. Because the insulating properties of polystyrene is so good, once that hive comes up to temperature, much quicker. You need less bees in the hive to maintain that temperature, so you've got more bees foraging for nectar, making honey, rather than have them wasted in the hive producing heat. Another great point when it comes to polystyrene hives is they cannot rot. So they don't get wet rot, dry rot, and woodworm or other boring insects doesn't bore into them to consume the material like wood. Polystyrene is very light as well, so if you're a commercial bee farmer or you're a beekeeper and you want to make light use of beekeeping, then supers can be very heavy. The polystyrene supers weighs that much less than the timber super. Likewise, if you're moving a complete hive, moving a complete polystyrene hive is going to be so much lighter than moving a complete timber hive. Another great point of polystyrene hives is some of these hives come ready assembled, so there's zero labour costs or extra work to assemble the hive. And even when they come flat pack, they are much easier to build and quicker to build as well. Now another key point of polystyrene hive, like I've mentioned with the heat, is polystyrene is a fantastic material to use in your nukes. Now whether you're doing mini Apidea nukes or bigger 6-frame nukes, polystyrene does very well, and the bees does very well with polystyrene in much smaller hives. And the last positive point about a polystyrene hive is it doesn't absorb water, so it's not an absorbent material like wood. So water doesn't penetrate through the polystyrene and back into the hive causing damp. Water stays out of it. Right, so that's all the positives of polystyrene hive, and there's some fantastic positive reasons there to go polystyrene, but let's look at some negative aspects of using polystyrene. So when you look at polystyrene, it's a petrochemical, so it comes from the oil industry. It's a form of plastic. So plastic is a very bad material when you come and think about it. There's a lot of nasty chemicals in polystyrene. So if you want to be really green or reduce your carbon emissions, reduce your carbon footprint type of thing, then polystyrene might not be an option. Now you could say it's not a single-use plastic, and that's true, but it's something you need to consider because it is a form of plastic. Now you can't sterilise a polystyrene hive using a blowtorch because the whole thing will just burn and melt. So when you need to sterilise a polystyrene hive, you need to chemically sterilise it with bleach and water mix. This sounds quite easy, but actually you need to submerge the poly hive in this solution for I think 20 minutes. Submerging polystyrene is not an easy task because it floats, so there's an extra work element there if you want to sterilise equipment. One of the biggest downfalls of polystyrene hives is it's not as strong as a timber hive. You will break a polystyrene hive much easier than a timber one. If it falls from the back of the pickup onto concrete, there's a real good chance it'll crack, if not dent. Likewise, when you work in the polystyrene hives using a hive tool to break apart the supers, that hive tool can damage the polystyrene over time, and then that will need to be repaired. Where with the timber hive, it's a strong material, you'll never wear the wood by popping the roof off or popping the supers from each other. Now, even though being light is a positive, it can be a negative as well. So we just had some big storms come through here recently, and the polystyrene roofs on the hive, the wind will just blow them straight off. So you've got to put a brick on, or even better, strap them down to make sure that the lid doesn't blow off in the wind. Another downside of polystyrene hives is some of these hive manufacturers, for ease of use, will make the external measurement on a polystyrene hive the same as a timber hive. Now, what you've got to sacrifice there is you've got to lose a frame on your internal measurement, because the polystyrene needs to be a lot thicker than the wood. So to get that same external measurement, you lose a frame inside that hive. So your actual brood box or super is going to have less capacity within that hive. Some of these polystyrene hives will have a bigger external dimension to keep the internal dimension the same. So you've got the same number of frames, but then the external dimension is far bigger than your wooden one, and your timber roofs won't fit those supers, which can be a bit of a problem. Now, depending who you ask, the polystyrene hive doesn't look aesthetically pleasing, doesn't look as good as a timber hive, especially within the countryside. So for example, if you've got a triple SI or an area of outstanding natural beauty, you might not want to put polystyrene hives there. Timber hive will blend in much better and will generally get less complaints. Now, even though a polystyrene hive can absorb water and it's a great material for using, you still need to paint it because the sun will break down that polystyrene. Now, the last negative point of a polystyrene hive is it's quite hard to repair a polystyrene hive. So you can't make your own bits to fix it. If you've got wood, you can cut the bit out, put the fresh bit in, it's fixed with a polystyrene. You probably haven't got molds, etc., or presses in your garage to produce these parts. Everything's got to be purchased in. And if something breaks quite bad, where you can't glue and screw it, then that part is pretty much useless. Well, that's the negatives of a polystyrene hive. Let's look at the timber hive and let's start with the positive aspects of using wood. Now, a big pro of using wood is it's environmentally friendly, and your carbon footprint is going to be much lower. Now, you can cut the tree, that tree is obviously dead, you mill it up, you create a material, and then use that wood to build your hive. That tree will be replanted, and that tree over, say, a period of 10 to 20 years will be back to the same stage that it was. The softwood is quite a fast growing tree, and there's a natural cycle there. So you cut the wood, you release carbon into the atmosphere, but you plant that tree back in, that tree grows, sucks that carbon back up. It's a healthy cycle, and that's very good for the environment. Now, unlike a polystyrene hive, you can sterilise a timber hive with a blowtorch, and that is the best way to sterilise anything, is with fire, and especially when it comes to foul brood disease, which you get in beehives. Fire is what kills it 100%, and there's no chemicals needed, so that burnt hive goes straight back on the bees, and there's no nasty chemicals or residues that you've got to be careful that you're going to wash all that out before you reuse it. Wood is extremely strong. Now, I've dropped some hives over and over and over again, and the timber hives, they just don't break. Wood is a fantastic material. It can absorb a lot of impact. That's why when you look at tools, especially hand tools, there's a reason that handle is made of wood, because it can withstand a lot of repetitive impact, and that's why it's a great material for beehives. Now, there's a lot of misthought out there that polystyrene hives is cheaper than timber hives. Now, I can't buy polystyrene hives as cheap as what I can buy my timber hives. So from a cost point of view, buying a timber hive will cost you a lot less money than a polystyrene hive. Another key part of using a timber hive is bees are very used to living in wooden boxes. They have adopted very well to living in wooden boxes, and when you look at where they live in their natural wild environment, it'll be in a tree hollow or a fallen down tree, etc. A big cavity, normally within a wooden structure, so bees are very used to living in wood. Another pro of using timber hives is it's really easy to repair. So if something is rotted or broken, you can just cut that piece out. With basic carpentry skills, you can cut a new piece of wood, put it back in, and that hive is ready to go once again. You can't do that with a polystyrene as easy. Now, a timber hive will generally last a lot longer than polystyrene hive. It can cope with a lot more impact, a lot more damage. As long as you paint to protect the wood right, that hive will last you probably a lifetime easily. And another good thing about wood hives is there's ample wooden hives on the second-hand market. Now, I feel very comfortable in buying second-hand wooden components. I never buy second-hand polystyrene kit because I hate the chemical sterilization aspect of using it, and polystyrene can go and look quite tired after a few seasons, where with wood you can sand it down, paint it up, refresh it, sterilize it, and that's going to last you many years. So that's the positives of using a timber hive. Let's look at the negatives. So even though wood is still a good insulator, it's not as good as polystyrene. A polystyrene hive will keep its heat much better than a timber hive. Rot and damp will be your biggest enemy when using timber hives. If the paint isn't adequate or the paint is peeled off over years, wet will start to get absorbed into the wood, then rot can set in, and then before you know it, your whole hive is turned into just mush and it disintegrates and it'll be no good. Just like the poly hive, you need to paint your wood or protect it with some kind of treatment. Now, depending on the type of wood you go for, larch, redwood, cedar, those types of hives will last a lot longer, but generally they still need paint to protect the wood from boring insects and damp and rot. Now, one of the biggest problems of using a timber hive is the assembly time. It takes a lot of time to build a timber hive from flat pack. A lot of labour goes into it, especially if you have to pay someone to build your hives for you. That can be a big price point, where at that stage it'd be cheaper to go down the polystyrene route. And like I mentioned on the positives of the poly hive, those hives can produce more honey compared to the wood, so that's the negative on the wood. Well, that's it. That's the pros and cons of both material. Now, I'm sure you can see there's pros and cons, or positives and negatives, for both of these materials. That's why someone like myself, we use the two of them, because I think that's probably the best way to look at it. Now let's look at this from a scientific point of view. I've got some key questions here and I'm going to tick them off. It's going to be a simple answer. What's best, poly or wood? I'll go through these questions. At the end we'll find out what's best to use, poly or wood. So the first question is, what material is going to give you more honey? That's a tick for polystyrene. What's more environmentally friendly? That's going to be the wood. Which one of these materials is going to have the lowest carbon footprint? Again, that's going to be the wood. Which is going to be the warmest hive for the bees or the coolest in the summer? That's going to be the polystyrene. Which is cheapest to buy? We're currently in the UK, that's wood. Other parts of the world might be different, but I doubt it. You can buy some wooden second or third quality hives really cheap. If you don't want assembly cost or wasting time building hives, that's a tick for the polystyrene. What's going to last the longest? I'd say that's a tick for the wood. What's going to be easiest to maintain and make parts to maintain your kit? That's going to be, again, wood. What looks best in a countryside type theme, more aesthetically looking in someone's garden or someone's field? Again, that's going to be wood. Which one is the easiest to clean? Now you could argue chemically sterilising a hive is easy, but it's nowhere near as fast as using fire on a flamethrower. That's my preferred way, and that's, in my opinion, the easiest way to sterilise a hive. So that goes to wood. What's going to last the longest when it comes to rot? That's going to be the polystyrene. Now finally, which is the easiest one to carry back and forth, or putting supers on, or migratory beekeeper, you've got to carry these hives, which is going to be easiest on your body? That's going to be the polystyrene. So that's 12 questions that I've put out there and I've answered quite honestly. Now let's see which material is the best based on those questions. So the wood came out at 7 and the polystyrene came out at 5. Very close based on those questions, but I think a wooden hive is generally better than a polystyrene hive when you consider all these points. But with that said, in reality there is no right or wrong answer. I've got probably 60% of my hives are timber. That's normally due down to the cost. The rest are polystyrene, and I will continue to buy polystyrene hives as well as timber hives. I think there are some fantastic options or benefits of using both material, and I don't think you want to exclude one from another, because depending on the type of year, your polys and your wood, they will perform differently, and it will help you get a honey crop depending on the type of year. If it rains a lot, if it's really cold, your poly hives might do really well. On a warm summer's day, the timber hives are going to be performing just as well, so you're not going to get the benefit out of using polystyrene. And likewise, if you want to keep the carbon footprint etc. down, then timber is the way to go on that route. Well, that's the outcome, but like I've said, there is no right or wrong answer, and even though I use mainly timber hives in my operation, if you were to look at how many timber nukes I've got compared to polystyrene, then my nuke system is way over 90% polystyrene on the nukes, because polystyrene is a great material to take advantage of in smaller hives. Let me know in the comments, do you agree with my outcome on which is the best type of hive to use, or the best type of material to use? Let me know, are you a poly guy or are you a timber guy? I'd love to hear what material your hives are. Are you, like me, utilising the benefits of the two material, or do you just use poly, or do you just use timber? I'd love to hear about it. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching and staying with this channel. Now if you like this video and you want to watch more of the same kind of content, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I try my best to put a new video out every week. Thanks for watching.